DonInLondon, hello. My video is all about recovery from addiction to substances and behaviour. My substance of choice was alcohol. My behaviour equally addictive around people, places and things. So these days I prefer to be sober, one day at a time, making better choices as I learn them one day at a time. Today, or just now, I'm going to do the Step 9 reading from this book, the 12 by 12 or 12 and 12 traditions, 12 steps and 12 traditions. Step 9, all about making amends. But before I do that, I'll just share the AA preamble and a gentle reminder, always, I don't represent AA, never can, never will. In the fellowship we're all equal sized, seen as trusted servants to help with unity, service and recovery. Unity in being sober, service to help others, and remain in recovery. So the fellowship of AA has provided me with a way of living life, free of fear mainly, free to make the best choice available to me sober today. So the preamble and then the reading of Step 9. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So, a fellowship of men and women, a desire to stop drinking. No, you don't have to pay for it if you've got no money. And if you have got money, please add some for the rent, tea, coffee, biscuits and some literature, but only a modest amount, because we never have large amounts of money. We are an organisation, not an organisation, a society and a fellowship, all about recovery, not about making money or having a power base. So everyone is free to be themselves in the fellowship under unity, service and recovery, with 12 steps to help us. So when I do the reading of Step 9 from the 12 and 12, there is something about the other ones on the way there. The first one, Step 1, is understanding the powerlessness of our situation when it comes to addiction. I was powerless over alcohol, and if ever I drank, life was unmanageable. That was Step 1, which took me a long while to get because I didn't want to give up my best friend. Step 2, being restored to sanity by a higher power, or came to believe a power greater than me could restore me to sanity. The insanity of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something different to happen. How on earth can I stop drinking? Well, if you're not an addict, it will seem incomprehensible that we can be under the thumb of a substance or a behaviour. But if you are an addict or in recovery, you will know too well what it's like to try and give something up and use willpower, which keeps on failing, and the insanity of trying to do the same old stuff over and over again. And then in Step 3, letting go and letting good things happen, or as some people say, let go and let God. And that is the exact words, because I don't want to misrepresent anything here. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And some people aren't believers in God in the fellowship. So we are a collection of atheists, agnostics and believers. And one of the odd things is I could be any of those things, depending on my life experience. So if my life experience is without God, or an atheist, or an agnostic not knowing, or a believer and believing in God. The most important part of this equation is I'm not God. So if I let go and let good things happen, let go and let things in, I've got a better chance of learning something which is going to keep me sober today. So the whole understanding is, it's only for today. or rather rejoice in the fact that we can have a great day, or a day as it may be, full of happiness and sadness as life is. And in step 4 we did a life story of what we are, who we are, where we are, why we are. A life story which includes the good bits and the bad bits, the good bits and the horrible bits, or the wonderful and the sad. I think that may be an ambulance rather than a police car. But in the UK we've just condemned riotous people in the capital and elsewhere as outside society, or at least the government in charge has. But I let go today. I don't get involved in that today, just for today, because it's none of my business just for today. Step 4 made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, the life story. And that's the only book I really need to have at my disposal when it comes to recovery, the life story I write. It doesn't have to be millions of pages, it just has to have the highlights which tell me what are my personality traits around good and harsh or negative behaviour. And from that, in step 5, I shared it with another human being, and as some say, admitted to God, or just admitted in good conscience what we have done to another human being, so that we get it out of ourselves, express out everything in the life story. Step 6 is about being entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, or in good conscience let go the bad of us, let go those things which hinder our progress. And they are normally the extremes of emotions that we just cannot sustain. It's better to have our emotions somewhere in the middle where they work in balance with reality. So my major deficits, if you like, too much fear, too much of putting on a brave face so you can't find out what's wrong with me, and an ego to cover up my shame and guilt about being inadequate. Those were my defects of character, and they still come out. So I have to keep on reminding myself on a daily basis, let's not have a defect type of day, let's have more of a step 7 day where courage, faith and confidence comes up as helpful. So in step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Shortcomings are not enough of something. So all my life I put on a brave face and hoped that nobody would find me out in my drinking days, but in my sober days I don't mind if you find me out, because I have the courage, faith and confidence to say I don't know today. I don't know the answer to that, and it's okay not to know. Just because I don't know doesn't mean I'm a lesser person. It's just outside my experience. So sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it doesn't really help us, and we learn what we need to learn. So with courage, faith and confidence we stop shutting the door to new information, taking risks. And in step 8 made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. It's simply a list from our life story of harmful situations, what harmed me, what harmed them, and often it was ignorance of a good answer, ignorance of not knowing, and fearful of finding out just in case it was going to be really, really hurtful, or fearful of admitting to being under the influence of a substance and a set of behaviours which were killing me. So I harmed people directly or indirectly by my behaviour or my absence in my own life and their lives. And then step 9 made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And the reason therefore for reading step 9 in this book is the official version of how the step is laid out. And I've tried to do this video earlier in the week, much to my annoyance. My software on my computer wasn't working quite as it ought to work. Something to do with the operator, I suspect, who updated the wrong bits in the wrong place. So we all make mistakes. So my amends to self this morning is I'm human and I make mistakes. Excuse me, but that's not a cop-out and saying, I'm going to hurt you because I make mistakes. I don't want to hurt you or anyone else. But the step 9 is about making amends from our history and see what we can do. So step 9, page 85 in this book, 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. And it starts off, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And this is where it becomes very important that we take account of how we can make amends without causing further harm. And that can be quite difficult. So, here we go. And if I put any narrative in, I shall try and remind you that I'm putting the narrative in here, how it worked for me. Good judgment, a careful sense of timing, courage and prudence, these are the qualities we shall need when we take step 9. After we have made the list of people we have harmed, that's in step 8, have reflected carefully upon each instance and have tried to possess ourselves of the right attitude in which to proceed, we will see that the making of direct amends divides those we should approach into several classes. There will be those who ought to be dealt with just as soon as we become reasonably confident that we can maintain our sobriety. There will be those to whom we can make only partial restitution, lest complete disclosures do them or others more harm than good. There will be other cases where action ought to be deferred, and still others in which, by the very nature of the situation, we shall never be able to make direct personal contact at all. And the trouble is, if we're a bit older, some of the people we may have harmed in our lives are now dead. And it's not a blessing, actually, it's just old age got them in my case, or not always, other diseases. Most of us begin making certain kinds of direct amends from the day we join Alcoholics Anonymous, and that direct amends is to be sober. The moment we tell our families that we are really going to try the program, the process has begun. In this area, there are seldom any questions of timing or caution. We want to come in the door shouting the good news. After coming from our first meeting, or perhaps after we have finished reading the book Alcoholics Anonymous, we usually want to sit down with some member of the family and readily admit the damage we have done by our drinking. Almost always we want to go further and admit other defects that have made us hard to live with. This will be a very different occasion, and in sharp contrast with those hangover mornings when we alternated between reviling ourselves and blaming the family and everyone else for our troubles. At this first meeting, it is necessary only that we make a general admission of our defects. It may be unwise at this stage to rehash certain harrowing episodes. Good judgment will suggest that we ought to take our time. While we may be quite willing to reveal the very worst, we must be sure to remember that we cannot buy our own peace of mind at the expense of others. So, in other words, total disclosure of all the bad behaviour, which maybe somebody doesn't know about, and then you just dump it on them without them realising what's coming, is very harmful and very shocking. So we try not to do that, and it's not to wriggle out of anything. We've got to be careful with people. Not that we're playing God, but we don't want to hurt them further. So this is a step which does require courage, fortitude, and a bit of feedback, maybe, from those around us who have done this before. And if you have a spiritual advisor of some sort, a mentor, a doctor, a professional, or a priest, a rabbi, or whatever your religious leader may be, or religious counsellor may be, it's always good to have a discussion about what to do. But this always makes me shudder, because secrets keep me stuck, and the other part of it is secrets keep those around me stuck. And I know in the past I've been pretty open, honest in the way I live my life, because I was proud of my way of life, my taking the risks. And yeah, I was in a place of misunderstanding about life and how to cherish people. I was quite superficial and indifferent to myself, which then allowed me, by ignorance, mainly ignorance of what might be right for people or wrong for people, I just behaved the same with people who were like me. Anyway, these are things which happen when we learn. So we can't buy our peace of mind at the expense of others. Much the same approach will apply at the office or factory. We shall at once think of a few people who know all about our drinking and who have been the most affected by it. But even in these cases we may need to use a little more discretion than we did with the family. We may not want to say anything for several weeks or longer. First, we will wish to be reasonably certain that we are on the AA beam, in other words on balance, and not falling off either way into an ocean of drink. Then we are ready to go to these people to tell them what AA is and what we are trying to do. Now this is step 9, so it's a bit far along in the process. Some people rattle along through the steps and they make sense of it straight away, and then in making sense of it, the amends may be done in the right time frame for them. I guess it depends on the time frame other people have had to adjust to us and our new sober outlook. Then we are ready to go to these people to tell them what AA is and what we are trying to do. Against this background we can freely admit the damage we have done and make our apologies. We can pay, or promise to pay, whatever obligations, financial or otherwise, we owe. The generous response of most people to such quiet sincerity will often astonish us. Even our severest and most justified critics will frequently meet us more than halfway on the first trial. There is caution here, because you need to know where you're coming from, and you need to know what you're making an amend for, and you need to know what you can do in terms of restitution and how to proceed, because it's not always in our hands how these things happen. The atmosphere of approval and praise is apt to be so exhilarating as to put us off balance by creating an insatiable appetite for more of the same, in other words, gushing out our amends. Or we may be tipped over in the other direction, when in rare cases we get a cool and sceptical reception. This will tempt us to argue or to press our point insistently, or maybe it will tempt us to discouragement and pessimism. But if we have prepared ourselves well in advance, such reactions will not deflect us from our steady and even purpose, which is to get right-sized with the world. And right-sizing means equal, that we understand that secrets about what we did don't help us or anybody else, because if the secrets are still inside us and stuck there, there's a bit of shame and guilt going on. And we need to share who we are with other people because truth is key, not the truth that we want to share, which is acceptable, the acceptable truth, which is just a part of it. We need to be truthful about who we are in the future and from here on in. Just today, actually. Truth of who I am, and see how I go. So step 9 is important. After taking this preliminary trial at making amends, we may enjoy such a sense of relief that we conclude our task is finished. We will want to rest on our laurels. The temptation to skip the more humiliating and dreaded meetings that still remain may be great. We will often manufacture plausible excuses for dodging these issues entirely. Or we may just procrastinate, telling ourselves the time is not yet, when in reality we have already passed up many a fine chance to right a serious wrong. Let's not talk prudence while practicing evasion. So prudence is, in consultation with other people, in the broadest sense, prudence is understanding how to make the amends and not evading it or procrastinating because we just fear the outcome. Procrastination will just delay how we feel about ourselves. As soon as we begin to feel confident in our new way of life and have begun by our behaviour and example, so living differently, to convince those about us that we are indeed changing for the better, it is usually safe to talk in complete frankness with those who have been seriously affected, and even those who may be only a little or not at all aware of what we have done to them. The only exceptions we will make will be cases where our disclosure will cause actual harm. These conversations can begin in a casual or natural way, but if no such opportunity presents itself, at some point we will want to summon all our courage, head straight for the person concerned, and lay our cards on the table. We needn't wallow in excessive remorse before those we have harmed, but amends at this level should always be forthright and generous, and it's always about what we did, not about what they did. There can only be one consideration which should qualify our desire for a complete disclosure of the damage we have done. That will arise in the occasional situation where to make a full revelation would seriously harm the one to whom we are making amends, or quite as important, other people. We cannot, for example, unload a detailed account of extramarital adventuring upon the shoulders of our unsuspecting wife or husband. And even in those cases where such a matter must be discussed, let's try to avoid harming third parties, whoever they may be. It does not lighten our burden when we recklessly make the crosses of others heavier. And that particular paragraph, I've never been married, but I have been in good standing and long-standing partnerships with wonderful women. And on one occasion, for all the reasons which seemed right at the time, I strayed and admitted it straight away, because it was the very last thing I wanted to do. But how could I possibly not admit my fault? And the outcome was quite tough, and an ending of trust. But when I look back, if I had breached trust and not told, I would have kept a person in the dark and blocked their spiritual progress, which is to live to truth, no matter what they did about it. And the consequences were right. We're not together, that's for sure. And the right things happened. Very hurtful to me, but at the same time, absolutely right to do. Freedom of choice is not something I can have and take away from another person. Many a razor-edged question can arise in other departments of life where this same principle is involved. Suppose, for instance, that we have drunk up a good chunk of our firm's money, whether by borrowing or on a heavily padded expense account. Suppose this may continue to go undetected if we say nothing. And this is where the government has a problem with politicians' expenses, and it continues today in the lies and the damn lies and statistics that are spread around. Everybody defending the indefensible. We don't live that way if we've got sober, because truth, love and wisdom are key. So just because other people do it doesn't mean that we do it, because it undermines our spiritual progress to live a truthful life. And after all, what is the point anymore? Now, I've worked in big companies which had padded expense accounts for very good reason. That was to oil the wheels of commerce, as they say. And they did. And it's a form of corruption. Anyway, I'm being judgmental there. I don't do that anymore, so I can't really judge it. But what leaders in politics and leaders in business need to remind themselves: you can't keep something you would take away from others. That's my view. Anyway, that's just me being judgmental. So even in step 9 and saying amends are important, it's about a personal conduct, not the conduct of other people. But there is an ethical thing in here as well. So do we instantly confess our irregularities to the firm in the practical certainty that we will be fired and become unemployable? That's a personal choice. Your personal choice. And my personal choice. Are we going to be so rigidly righteous about making amends that we don't care what happens to the family and the home? And the answer is, that is just purely self-indulgent if we put at risk other people's lives by our wrongdoing or misdemeanours in the past just to get a kick out of confessing. But we can make restitution, and there are ways to do it. Or do we first consult those who are so gravely affected, or are to be gravely affected? So did the politician who built a moat in his back garden consult with his wife after being caught out? Well, the answer was he got caught out and the moat had to be paid for. Do we lay the matter before our sponsor or spiritual advisor, earnestly asking God's help and guidance? In other words, in good conscience, put right what we did wrong, because that's what we do. Meanwhile, resolving to do the right thing when it becomes clear, cost what it may. Of course, there is no pat answer which can fit all such dilemmas, but all of them do require a complete willingness to make amends as fast as, and as far as may be possible in a given set of conditions. In other words, we need to clear the path to an open, honest way to live a sober life, and this is part of it. Above all, we should try to be absolutely sure that we are not delaying because we are afraid, for the readiness to take the full consequences of our past acts and to take responsibility for the well-being of others at the same time is the very spirit of step 9. And in big business, decisions are made every day about the well-being of others, and I've been in big organisations which have gone from tens of thousands down to just a few thousand employees, which really undermined my understanding of how business works and to what extent the financial critical eye, the analytical mind, takes no account of human feelings, human aspirations, and complete lives being changed. And it doesn't always work out the way we might have thought it ought to. Anyway, that's just another story. The most important thing about step 9 is the amends. Genuine, heartfelt restitution as we can. And saying, what would you like me to do? What can I do to help put matters right if there need to be a way to put matters right? Most often it is a change in our moral compass which is required, in our attitude and behaviour, to be open, honest and willing. And very often that means a complete change in what we do in life rather than what we did in life. Driven to drink, driven to a career, driven to a pattern of work which may have been completely unhelpful, and a social way of living which was completely alien to those we wanted to love most, because we were still being driven by a substance or a behaviour rather than a conscience and a better outlook on life. Anyway, we can moralise all day long. The most important part of step 9 is a freedom to look at the world and know we need not fear what has gone before. Secrets will keep us stuck. Secrets about anything can cause, if they're revealed and we have been caught out in not telling all the truth, the consequences are dire, because we go backwards rather than forwards, and we get angry and inflamed. So better to let it out at some point in some way, with the help of those around us who can give us good advice on how to make the amends, without doing further harm to other people. And in the past, when we have been under the influence, at our worst, it was the very best we could be. We are human beings, and when we are tormented, then we don't behave in balance, we behave at extremes. So that is true of everyone. So the same philosophy need apply. Forgive everything of everyone, every day. Don't make it a big thing. Keep it in proportion to the day on which it happens, so that as life rolls along, we're not carrying huge resentments. Every day I have to see this person, they always behave this way, and why do I have to put up with it? The answer is you don't have to put up with it. Step 9. If you forgive yourself for being the worst you were when you were trying to be your best, recognizing that other people every day and ourselves, we're trying to be the best we can be, because why else would we want to be any other way? But it might be the worst for another human being. So if that human being turns around and says, no, I don't like that, you can do the same, but you do it in a way which is helpful. I like you. At the same time, when you behave this way, I can't stand it. I can love you and hate your behaviour. So we don't undermine the courage and esteem of another person. We can love them and hate their behaviour. So it's, I love you, and when you behave like that, that's what we see. And I hope people do that to me in the future. I love you, Don, but when you behave like this, it really gets up my nose, or you really is hateful, I hate it. Yes. And then I can change, or say no and move along. We still have freedom of choice, and we can't please the rest of the world. We have to be clear in our conscience on what's going on, and whatever I need more than anything else sometimes is that serenity prayer or simple meditation to what I can do. I can change my attitude, I can change my behaviour. I cannot change your attitude, and I cannot change your behaviour. That's your choice, what you do with you. But if I love you and your behaviour is horrible, I'm more likely to walk away from you. Not because I don't love you, but because I just cannot stand you when you're like that. The truth of life. Some people we love them and their behaviour is wonderful. Some people we love them, their behaviour is horrible. Don't stop loving people, please. The serenity prayer. To God or in good conscience, as you come to believe for yourself, it's your understanding of what works, can do, can't do, wisdom to know the difference. So to God or in good conscience, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference for me is just for today.